Hi all, welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. Among our usual participants, we also have Venkat today joining us from Australia. Uh, he has an interesting exposure of experience. He's worked literally in all geographies, I should say, US, Europe, India, Southeast Asia, and Australia. He also has worked with services companies. He's worked with a product company. He's worked with uh, a conventional company's IT department, internal IT systems, both as a CIO, which is internal facing, as well as a CTO, which is external facing. That's an interesting experience. On top of that, to add to the flavor, he has deep exposure to medical, banking, and insurance. And I think there are very few people out there who have that kind of a varied exposure. And with this kind of an exposure, I was kind of curious that we could learn from him how is architecture approached in these different worlds and different domains, right? The concept of architecture, and as an architect, how was his life different, or how we are architects? Thanks, Venkat, for joining. Now we'll put you on the stand and grill you.
Thanks, Corin. Thanks. So nice of you to invite me to be a part of this dialogue conversation. Really happy to join.
So
Uh,
maybe let's start with the easy thing, right? In ISA architecture pillar, right? I think one of the things is there are multiple pillars about five basic pillars. Like basically, it's a business. How the business matters to an architecture. What are the actual design, which is the typical architecture diagrams, architect block diagram. Then, what is the non-functional requirements? It's called quality attributes. Then it would be the environment in which the application, BCPs, availability, things like that. And last but not the least is the human dynamics of developing the application, maintaining it, adopting, and things like that, right? So these are different aspects of architecture. So maybe I'll just start off by telling, in terms of, let's say, in the different geographies that you have worked with, right? How do you see, I think design will be pretty much kind of same in most of the geographies, right? Like how you approach design, screen design. I think that's kind of little stabilizer. And I think it's the other pillars which are like
Fuzzy.
very fuzzy, and lot of maturity needs to happen. So if you take, let's say, let's start with the key thing about aligning the business needs, right? Whether it's the funds available or the requirements or adoption. If you have to broadly compare, let's say, the US way of teams working together, the Indian teams and the Southeast Asian and the Australian team, what do you think is the psyche of the people who was working as architects, whether it's a labeled role or unlabeled role? What are the differences that you see, both good and bad?
So when I reflect back, uh, I mean so far, I mean probably off late, maybe I do see some conversations that are happening around capabilities. But in general, even today, I don't see a discussion or an inclination for people to talk through the lens of capabilities. And I think it's picking up, but it's slow. Usually, when you look at it from, I tend to look at it from all the way from where the demand is originating to how the demand is finally being realized. And when you look at where the demand is originating, you also ask why the demand is originating. And today, when we talk about, there is customer experience, and those are all nice, or rather, every organization wants to delve into those, either because there is a transformation program, or there is simply the industry is threatening to push organizations into irrelevance. But while we do that, there is, of course, when we talk about customer experience, we are also talking about finding what the customer wants, and how do we then incorporate that. It's an outside in view, which is nice, which is important, but it's also an inside out view to understand how are we organized ourselves through the lens of capabilities. If you want to do, how do you know that which capability in your, let's say, in your claims process, or which capability in your payments process you need to focus this year, and which ones you're okay to focus in 24 months.
For others listening in, can you expand a little bit on what you mean by capabilities?
All right. I mean, classical definition, I will go with that. Capability is something that an organization doesn't change very often. It's driven by industry, and sometimes it's created anew by somebody who's disrupting an industry. But it's something that changes maybe over 10 years, 15 years probably. Like payments for a bank as a capability has not changed in the last 40 years. A bank is expected to manage process payments.
Okay.
Yeah. Deposit products and savings products for a bank has not changed. So that still continues to be there. However, it is being reinvented in many ways, right? So from a capability, when I look at it, I use that lens to define capability.
So capability is something like, I have a capability to talk, right? Now it could be I can use a grammatically correct English or a broken English, or it could be, but the capability to communicate, that I have to communicate, I should be capable to communicate my thought is fairly straightforward over many years. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Now that when we start looking at, what are the 15 things a line of business needs to do today, it is, and they may come up with, we need to do A, B, C, D projects, right? But my experience has been to be able to translate that in terms of, this means if I'm doing let's say, if I'm building a new mobile app, what does that mean? Why do we want to do that? What capabilities do we want to change, modify, alter, introduce? That conversation doesn't happen. Straight away from why I'm doing that project, or what I want to do as a project, I want to build a mobile app. People jump right into requirements. I need a mobile app. I need 3 clicks. I need to have a seamless user interface. We need to talk to UX people, get this kind of color combination. And then, we get into the rats and mice straight away without having that little conversation, little but very crucial conversation of what it means.
And I think specifically, it's more, there are IT capabilities and business capabilities. And I think here you're alluding to the business capability.
And because you make the jump from what I want to do straight into IT capability, we kind of bypass this business capability conversation. And hence the gap, the so-called gap between business and IT, which we have been trying to bridge for many years, somehow has evaded us.
So there is a need, some user, one business user or one stakeholder elicits a need, and immediately we go to the IT capability and start doing
straight away
without getting into the business capabilities. It's kind of interesting, Venkat. It's just kind of the problem that you were talking, right?
Exactly.
As you're calling, it's exactly the same thing. Maybe we will talk about that to connect this a little bit more. This capability conversation, right? If you compare these different geographies, US, India, and where do you see is like it's more matured, and how? And it's kind of little tricky nowadays, because even if you say US, you have an Indian dev team, or you have some team in Southeast Asia like that. So it's not very easy to say, this is a US kind of a thing. But
you're right.
If it's driven or owned by, if the majority, let's say the power center is in the US, how does it go? Southeast Asia, how does it go? What have you seen?
So for me, I would think this whole capability conversation, if I were to link it to a framework, it will be in the business architecture realm. And this is where actually enterprise architecture as a strategy has a seat at the table. After that, you're coming into application data and all that. You're already, that's no longer a seat in the business roundtable, if you ask me. And in US, the way I'm seeing it is there is probably a better level of conversation in as a in a strategic conversation. If you see um, like TM Forum, for example, or if you look at BIAN, Banking Industry Architecture Network, which is basically from the Europe, I think they do see this, and there is some interest in the Southeast Asia, APAC, that side. I think it's very project driven. It's the other way, and I could be wrong, but that's been my observation. Is that on that side of the world, at least there is a conversation about having something in place. But this also depends on industry to industry. So if I look at healthcare providers, I'm yet to come across a capability model.
Okay.
If I look at insurance, there is something like Accord, and there's also something which is like Panorama 360 is another one. If you look at banking, there is BIAN. If you look at telecom, there's TM Forum.
Okay.
But there are a whole bunch of textile, for example. Is there a capability model? I don't think so.
So the capability model is kind of a starting point where you have business capabilities, IT capabilities, and tying somewhere to the tech thing. I have a trick question over here. Okay. So it's one of the things that's happening is, which I have seen is, there is this community, right, of enterprise architecture who are there making these cool PDF, PowerPoints and things like that. And then there are projects which is running differently. Okay. And in some of the cases, I'll go ahead and stick my neck out. More than 50 to 60% of the cases, they are talking in different planes, right? And it's like the enterprise architects are the elites of the world, okay, to which the common project architects are the common people who don't understand their stuff. And then the common men kind of say, oh, those guys talk something which is not like, cannot be used it practically. Okay, so you have those artifacts getting generated there, PDFs after PDFs and versions after versions. But when it comes to projects, it gets executed something here. And there is it doesn't really, the handoff from there to here and it flowing, there is a gap that is there. Doesn't mean that the thing did not be there. Probably what needs to be done is find out a way in which both can handshake. Like, problem is, I think one of the things which I have seen is the reference architectures are evolving. They become better and better, right? And the real world systems are lagging. Okay. And so it's hard to, I have to go for a world where I will do one greenfield development and I will take that capability and implement it. Okay. And by the time I implement it, the standards have again evolved. Again, that gap comes up. So that continuous linking with these two is one challenge, right? But both needs to happen. How do you see that? Have you seen any place where some teams or some industry been able to kind of build a nice bridge where communication, each one is not in their own island telling, the other guy is not doing the right thing?
See, I think it's an identity question actually.
Okay.
So, for example, we say we are a digital organization. The way I see digital is, then a business person should be equally comfortable talking technology, and a technology person equally should be able to talk about business.
Okay.
If you identify yourself as a digital team, and if you are able to fulfill these mindsets, and I have seen some examples where that kind of teams are there, where the business basically can roll up their cuffs and say that let's look at this source code, which shocked the living daylights out of me.
Okay.
And then vice versa, the tech guys is saying, let's look at our P&L. But it's a very rare occurrence.
Very
but
nice
if that happens,
yeah,
If that happens, this bridge is broken, and this bridge is otherwise not able to sustain, is because business people are chasing a P&L and tech people are chasing timelines and scope and budget. And in this whole thing, if you look at and rightfully, and this is the dreaded standards conversation. Here is a reference architecture we're going to build over the next 4 years, and we should have a SaaS platform for that, and we should have a next generation digital platform for this. But this platform will take 24 months to be set up. And in that 24 months, business has commitments that they have made to them, to the market or to the board, and they have to do that on
so I'm
whatever
the
system
poor
is
project
available.
architect and you are the enterprise. Okay, Venkat, you go do your thing. I'm going to start developing my code. I have to deliver it.
I have a question.
And then we have to, go ahead.
Yeah, so when you say this whole handoff and this breaking of bridges and P&L versus time and scope, my question is, why does it have to be one or the other, right? Or why does there need to be a handoff in the first place, right? So the whole concept of handoff seems against what is expected, right? So it's the whole.
I agree. Yeah. Every handoff
just
has an issue.
It should be. So and my question is, why shouldn't P&L be always the case for everybody, right? Because that is where the money for even IT is coming from, right? So
absolutely.
So
I
why
totally
can't
agree
that
with
be
you.
the one and primary and says everything flows from there? I'm just asking.
Absolutely, and this leads me back to the first thing that we spoke about, right? How do you say, and that's why many people, including the market research organizations, have kind of dubbed the PMO as an extinct dinosaurs and all that. I very emphatically differ. It's just that the roles that they play now would become different. And here's the thing, right? A group of people decide that these are the 15 things that they want to do, and they get some budget, right? How do we then take that budget, which was done by some back of the napkin calculation, using some set of standards or whatever, and then suddenly you will find a line of business has X dollar bucket, and within which they have to execute so many projects. So the people who are executing have never been a party to that conversation on why you chose those 15, how you chose that 15, will that 15 actually meet what you're trying to achieve? Because they are left out of the P&L conversation. They are only handling project P&L. They are not handling, or they are not even having visibility into the business P&L. So this problem is because if everybody has an open book, if you say this is my line of business, and this is the IT team that is going to have complete visibility into what I'm doing, how much I'm going to spend in marketing, how much I'm going to spend in resourcing, how much I'm going to spend on license. They all have a shared understanding of that. That team has far greater chances to succeed than if everybody operates in their own kind of
I think when it comes down to a project, it's not even P&L, it's just cost management. You have a budget cost, you just meet within that, then you're good.
It's a project cost management. Yeah, I agree. It is not even the P&L.
It's not even.
And this is where I see that architects are, if they are able to be a participant in that demand planning stage,
that I'm actually
so much more better.
Very like one of the things which I had kind of recently posted is about bright spot. So you said there are some team that has been able to do. How did they manage to do it? Majority are struggling to do that.
It's also
what is
the nature.
What is a trick, or what is the thing that they are able to do that? How did that happen?
So if you are a software company, I think that equation is very different. But if you're a non-software organization, and then you have a clear digital product that you are managing, and there is set up a separate team for that.
Okay.
So you see, then the definition is already changed. So then that team is focused on creating one product which is a digital product. So for example, um, I don't know what would be a right example. So let us say you are a hospital chain, and your digital product is, you're creating a digital product called online consultation. That's your digital product.
Okay.
The doctor, the technology team, everybody is a part of that one team who has a product owner. Mindset is already shifted.
Mm.
Otherwise,
And product, is it like they are doing that for internal consumption or giving it out like a
even
SaaS to somebody
external
else?
also. It could be like, if you're a hospital, you could conceive of it as a SaaS platform, or you could create a platform out of it, or you can
But the
just treat it as
mindset
a
is you
service.
treat it like a product.
Mindset it is you treat it as a product, because then I see that it is not like I finish the project, dust my hands, and off I go. I am building this, I have to live with it. So then the choices you make are also very careful. You also know that this is a product that has to go live by a certain date. You know what shortcuts you're taking for now and what shortcuts you will overcome over a period of time. Everybody thinks
But
in
all
a certain
internal
way.
IT had this, they are aware, right? See, any internal IT team, okay, whether it's a manufacturing company, when they know that a project is being done, they know they have to maintain it also, right? So so in
Again,
theory,
when we say maintain,
yeah.
development team will say, I'll give to production support, give one 30-page,
Oh,
300-page
okay.
documentation and hand it over.
Okay.
Then what
Okay.
do you
So
do?
that's the devil is in that. Okay. So basically,
And
so the dev team is different. The maintenance team is different.
yes, and
Ah.
also,
Okay.
how, if you don't look at it as a product, can you will you have the mindset to maintain a persistent team? Or you will say, this project, okay, I'll get some hired hands, we'll execute this and we'll go away. And next year, when we have another set of projects, maybe on the same platform, but it's treated as another set of projects, then for every project, I'll hire a set of people.
I think that's actually,
That's where the problem is.
that's where the problem is. See, we talk about, the entire concept of DevOps is supposed to get this mindset, right? It's not like you hand it over to somebody. But I think I also see the challenge that, there are people who are like, you, how do I put it? Someone says I specialize in DevOps, but they just do CI/CD as DevOps.
Kumaran, I will keep my mouth shut about that, because I will not call myself a DevOps person. But from whatever little I have understood and whatever little I have seen about implementing either Agile or DevOps, I think there is a lot left to be accomplished in that space. I will only say so much because
it will become a rant session otherwise. Right?
Yeah.
So DevOps,
yes.
if DevOps truly done, we'll get that mindset, right? What you're talking about, because the person developing it is going to operate it, so they'll keep that. So it's not just. So it's like operations and development is a cycle. It's not like a linear stream where it finishes.
Because it is a product team already.
Yes. That works for product teams. Means if you have a product team, then you can actually do DevOps because you're creating it and running it as a product. If you do a project, a service organization cannot really do DevOps.
It's just land. As long as you treat it as a project.
Yes.
Deepak, as long as it treats it. But if you say I'm a services company and I'm an implementation organization.
Yeah.
And I have created certain productized services and I have already got a mindset. Then maybe I can be innovative. Otherwise, for a pure play, is very difficult.
I think there is one important point is how does the business treat IT or the capability of IT, right? So that is what is going to decide whether IT is going to be influential or not, right? So there are two ways to look at it. One is IT is treated as a mechanic of the car and says, you fix the car, I decide where to go, right? And or it says this is not a mechanic scenario. We need to decide how we want to go, and IT is at the table, and you are influencing and getting influenced by the business. So that mechanic car scenario is completely different. Mechanic car scenario is probably services. It says, you fix my car, I go where I want to go. You have no influence there.
I agree, and that is what I said. You're actually spot on, because on one side you're like an order taker. The other side is, you have as much a seat at the table, and then we together figure out
because
how do we take the next step forward.
IT is a business capability now. It is no longer backroom enabling business process thing. Means, especially the example which you gave for digital service like doctor consultation. Now this is a joint service by business and IT. Right?
Absolutely.
It's no longer IT is providing me video camera and conferencing, and it is a complete product by itself, where doctor is as much a component as much is the whole video and audio, as plus the whole IT scenario.
I think
Absolutely.
as the world is evolving, I don't think there's any business which can afford to kind of say, technology is not a key component of my offering.
Exactly.
It cannot be. It's not optional anymore, right? So,
No.
but I think of the geographies and industries that you have seen, right? Who is more closer to that place where they can play together as a team, right? And or okay, so let me make that easier. Of the different teams that you have seen, which teams have in geography? Okay, basically, I'm trying to get it. Is there a cultural element, or is there a education in that geography or that industry, which kind of aids them? So obviously, within the different, some will be closer to that, right? They are little more matured in terms of their alignment, and they think together. When what you have seen, which geography or thing industry you have seen, maybe one or two of them, or maybe three of them, and what do you guess, just your opinion on what has helped them? Is it that industry or the geography, the culture of that place? What could that be?
I think the one thing that one is whoever has been forced to get onto the. I mean, this is my opinion. Is there are, of course,
Venkat,
there will always
everybody here has only opinions. None of us are experts, so it's okay.
No, I'm just trying to think about it in the sense when we most of these organizations which have made that breakthrough are those who I think would have had their back against the wall already.
Oh, okay.
Or it's just reinvent or perish. There is no other second.
So you're telling that
given.
the one contributor is like they are for whatever reason, that team or that company or that business is like either you change or you die, kind of. They've been in that place. Okay.
That is one. The other is if companies that basically have had the visionary leaders where they saw, okay, there's very likely something is going to come our way, and what they've done is they've probably allowed a small team to be carved out and put that team in direct competition internally with the brick and mortar business and say, challenge them. If you are able to cannibalize this business, it's for the company is money moving from left pocket to right pocket.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Company is anyway making money.
Right. Okay.
Right. So you do that. That is another way. And this some companies have done. I read this I think a couple of years ago. I read this book by, you may have heard this name, Clayton Christensen.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about it very, very loudly. He does talk about it, which is I think fantastic. Those who have done that.
So in your case, like for example, in that hospital example that you're telling, it's something like, let's say the CEO and CTO come up, get some 10 people, and then say, we are going to start a new online consulting offering. Okay.
Or a
And
teleradiology business,
see if you
or one
can
of
shut
those.
down the 3 clinics that we have got.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's your competition. Your job is to shut down the 3 clinics, whichever we have. Those remote small clinics that you have, you can, every clinic that you get, you will get a bonus.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
but that requires that one
Yeah.
ability to introduce that kind of a disruptive competition inside, which is not all organizations probably won't do it.
It's too
I think
hard.
Some will do it.
most organization, they are followers, right? So if there's an industry trend to do it, right? For if Columbia Asia or any other, all the hospital chains, Fortis, Apollo, if there is online consultation is a business, it doesn't matter who started it, everybody has to do it now, right? So
I agree.
the industry, so if you are a laggard in the industry, you will be forced at some point to quit
At
that
some
whole
point.
business, right? So I think the difference is, in our business we are going to deal with most of those people. Very rarely you are going to deal with people who are the
The
cutting
small
edge.
proportion. Yeah, small proportion.
Yeah, very rarely you are going to deal with people who are cutting edge, who really want to change the industry. But most architects are going to deal with the followers. So my question to architects is, how are you influencing that you? How are you enabling that whole decision making, that business starts valuing you at the same level, right? So what can the architects do to make
I
it
think
happen?
one thing which I'm experimenting and dabbling with now, and which I remember during my early days of working with Kumaran um, was actually being able to craft a story. People talk, this is what the business wants to do, and then IT saying, oh, we are running these 15 projects which will do A, B, C, D, which will enable so many things. But then to be able to narrate a story on how these initiatives, business initiative, IT initiatives, are all hanging together, I think the architects are very well positioned to create those narratives and keep those narratives alive. Because when you lose the narrative, you lose direction. If you lose direction, it doesn't take long before the foot soldiers begins to take the hit.
So my question is, how do you get to tell that story? Because
Yeah,
somebody has to listen to your story. That is the.
agree. Perfect.
I know
Perfect.
the story has to exist before somebody gets to tell you.
Perfect.
So how do you get into that position where somebody says, yeah, tell me the story, I am willing to listen.
Perfect. So one thing, and I've been kind of doing some listening to this gentleman. I think his name is Sean Callahan. He's a business storyteller, and he has a podcast called Anecdotally Speaking. Very interesting. And that's when I was totally, immersed into this whole storytelling, and I always thought it was a nice thing to do. But then I realized, okay, how can I do something like that? And Kumar, and you may have got a thing about what I was trying to do when I was reaching out to you and asked, do you know a sketch artist who can actually do me an illustration? And then finally what I decided to start drawing myself. So I actually take, all these 15-20 conversations that I have with different stakeholders, and then I try to do an illustration, right? Of, okay, here is the strategy. This is what the strategy is talking about. These are the 5 things that the business wants to do, and these are the 4 things that the IT wants to do, and this is how they will all string together. And I try to create one illustration and then share that illustration with, let's say, whoever the stakeholders are, and see if it resonates. If it resonates, and if that illustration sticks in people's mind, I think I have embedded a anchor point, embedded a seed for change. And that's all it is. Only time will tell whether the seed has borne fruit or whether the anchor points were strong enough. And I think because initially I was looking for somebody who will do it for me. I realized that no, that's rubbish. I'm just trying to be an ivory tower architect who has an idea, and suddenly I want somebody like the days of the Maharaja, and I will say something and somebody will scribble something and present to me with a portrait. And that's rubbish. I want to do it. I want to be a storyteller. I want to be illustrator. Okay, sharpen your pencils. And I started doing that, and there has been some success, and I'm kind of emboldened by that now. And because the only way is you've got to do something or say something that sticks in people's mind, so that they can come back to you later and say, or something that I as an architect can go back to and say, this is what was a story I presented, or we as a team, our architecture team presented. Are we sticking to the story? Has something changed? And I can take the same illustration 6 months later and say, this was my original hypothesis. Tell me if it still holds good or no. Probably something. Only time will tell how far down the road I get in terms of success. But yeah, you need a technique for that. And architects don't have a formal technique for it.
I think it's good to hear that. I think one of the things in HypoHire, right, we have something called UPSA, which is Unusual Problem Solution and Achievement. It's a story format. I think in some episode I had talked about it. I think Nishant has, so Nishant was a part of a program which we had done. So one of the outputs is, I think, in the HypoHire framework, right, it's basically we have envision, execution, and evangelizing. And we say evangelizing is a key component of a digital transformation. Without evangelizing, you can't. So for evangelization, you need a skill, and that skill is called UPSC. So we kind of cover it. And I think kind of what Venkat says is basically, I think we need to, a story can be told in probably, if we're good at it, as we get better and better at it, right? I think with Nishant's team, we were doing like big projects. We kind of got it such that you can present it in one slide. So we kind of templates, and we kind of taught them, how do you present a story in one slide? So it can be a offline story. It can be a one-line email story. So, so for example, right, I think one of the easiest things which I've heard, it's a serious thing. Okay, so it's something like the CFO wanted people to enter timesheets in compliance. Okay, so many years back, Cognizant, the CFO sent a mail, free 55-inch LCD TV for employees. Okay, that was the subject line in the mail. Okay, they opened it and says, now that I've got your attention, please make sure to fill your timesheet. We have to meet compliance. Okay. So the one of the things about a story is something which will, the hook that Venkat was talking, right?
Yeah.
You get that. So here that headline was that. So the story is that. It's just a sad story, okay? The moment you open the mail, but the thing is, so you can have, I think that's a great point, Venkat. I think it's getting that story, right? And we need to have different versions of a story. A long story which will run like a web series, right? It'll keep running.
Yes.
Then you will have a 2-minute story, maybe a email one-slider story. So I think architects really need to keep that, to kind of keep that guessing and going on. I think it's pretty good. I mean, and it's so many things that we would still need to talk about. We just touched upon the business aspect of it, and then there are human dynamics and then culture and other things. Probably we'll get deeper into that in the cupping episode. Sometimes what happens, Venkat, is that when we take a topic, right, it looks like it's not a topic, it's actually a series or a chapter.
True.
We think it's a section, then as we are talking, it says maybe it's a chapter, then it says, oh shit, it's actually a book. Then we realize, oh no, it's not a book, it's actually a subject.
I agree.
So usually we try to do 1 hour, and then what happens is after this we do another session. So that is which Deepak runs. It's called Enterprise Tech India, and that is basically, the theme is slightly different, the same area, but it's more like how do enterprise run their business? So this one is more for architects and how they consume it, and that is more from enterprise. It could be it can be anybody in the enterprise tech, right? It can be the PMO, it can be the CIO, it can be GM operations. So that will have more a flavor of something like that. Okay, so we discussed something on that bit. But before we close, I think Nishant, Venkat, you have any questions to ask Venkat? But Venkat, please do join us in other things also.
Definitely, I will do that.
Nishant, Venkat, do you have any questions?
Yeah, actually, I have so many questions, but I will just
Okay, you ask
attempt with one
one.
or two questions. Yeah,
Other episodes we will take more
yeah.
of them. Yeah.
Just start with the things that Venkat mentioned. Like when we say, like, usually the architects have gentleness. Like, they always still. I think that culture has not changed. Like, they always think like the engineering skill is the key thing, and that should be the one and the only thing they have to focus. But
Really?
as
Other than
yeah,
coding, they need to do something else, architects.
yeah, as Venkat said, like, how we should influence an architect, like, we should convince an architect, like, they should be an influencer too. Because even, say, to be very honest, actually, I got this other aspects of architects from this technology leadership training, from this training magic. And later on, actually, I started on thinking or realizing that, yeah, these are the other pillars that as an architect should focus. And even I try to convince the same thing to other major or other dream architects in our product, but still they are not convinced, like, no, that is not the thing. The technology, architecture, design, these are the key things. Others are actually should run by this business team, because even say if we build something and if we present that things to a whole team, say the audience will have the senior VPs or this and junior developers, and when we present them something to or a small MVP or something to that group, the architect's general mindset is they should present that AWS deployment diagram, those things and all too. But they think that is the bigger thing, and that the only thing the people would be interested. But ideally, in a recent case, what we tried is, like, we just tried to present is like a small movie trailer, like, what is the value, and yeah. So, and that got more appreciation than the other one. Like, so,
Yes.
but the architects believe, like, the audience, that is the audience problem, because the senior VP's problem, like, they are not realizing the value of the engineering aspects in the other things, that the deployment diagram, the complexity there. So, do you have any tricks to convince these guys?
I would have been, I would have been sitting in a gold mine if I did.
You knew how that used to be done.
Seriously, I would have been the hottest paid consultant in the market. But as you said, and I always like to go to the other reading that I did in Phoenix project. You may
Actually,
have read
Venkat,
that.
let me just add an addendum to this question, right? Now, you have a problem, right? You have these enterprise architects who kind of think technology is below their dignity. Talking code about that is below their dignity. Okay, that is for ordinary developers to talk about code. Oh, code. Oh, no, that's been years since I don't get into that stuff, like, I've got these common, ordinary people to take care of that. Okay. You have that on that side, and the other side is this. You will say, what P&L numbers are? No. Technology, which I will tell you which INI file, what setting you have to do. I'm good at that. So these two things are there.
Two polar opposites, yeah.
Two polar opposites.
And it depends on what role you're playing. In a team, everybody need not be doing only strategic work, and everybody need not be doing AWS deployments. So one way to answer Nishant's question is, within the team, if we are able to kind of find out who's good at what.
Okay.
See, some people, they will remain, AWS specialists for the whole life, and that's what is their calling in life. But as long as a team, we have an output, that we can handle all kinds of stakeholders. Head of engineering, CTO of an acquisition company, or the CEO of the company. Everybody, so if there are 3 people in the team and 3 people are able to tackle 3 stakeholders with one cohesive story, that's the winning formula. But if you try to convert everybody to do that, that's a very tall order and probably not practical, because you will, if everybody is just doing strategy, then who can talk to an engineering head to give a guidance on whether I should use EC2 this, or whether I should use AWS Inspector, or I should use Guard Duty, or why I should not use this? Somebody has to be able to also delve into that level. It's equally meritorious.
This is what they call as the T-shape skill set, right? So you have a broad skill set which is broad, and you have a deep skill set which may be technology, which may be strategy, right? So everybody needs to have a minimum level of broad skill set.
Correct.
And so maybe they need to understand strategy. They may not be able to specialize in doing it, but I think that may be a better strategy to think about, that how do you skill your people to at least understand what other people are doing.
Appreciate it. Yes, appreciate it and have your strong point. Exactly. So it's like a band. Somebody has to play bass, somebody has to play drums, somebody has to sing. You need all to create an orchestra. And as long as you identify, and then that comes back to Kumaran's earlier question on people and dynamics. And I always believe that if as architects we are not able to infuse change within our own team, how can we dream of doing it at an enterprise level?
I think that's a nice point. Probably if I kind of I'm just rephrasing whatever you said so that I got the point clearly. So you're telling, okay, so we need evangelizing as a skill, or a business thing as a skill. So rather than looking at it like the architect should specialize in that. If he does it, it's good. But then there are architects who are resistant to, like, you kind of tell them, okay, so this is the company act, or this is an accounting book. Read 2 chapters of that. They just can't get themselves to sit and read, okay, or making a story. Probably it's something in between where you kind of say, understanding that is important. Find another team member who can actually do that piece. So it's like, let's say a deck has got 3 slides. So the first slide will be made by one team member, but then architect presents the whole thing.
Correct.
But the slide about that is made, probably that will be, that's easier to convert that person to say, I don't want you to be a master of business strategy, but appreciate that it is important. Do you get it? Yes, I get it. Okay, make sure you take some help, and make sure your architecture presentation has an ingredient of that.
I think that would be a way to make one step forward.
That's good advice.
All right.
Nishan.
I have one question. So when you're talking about the business,
Nishant had something, so let him finish.
Okay.
One more thing is regarding that gap between this business and this technology, this IT. So even though we say I completely agree that Agile, actually we have so many things yet to be filled, like gaps still there. But seriously, when I look both the cases before Agile and now with Agile, actually Agile could fill some level of gap in there. So when we say, especially in the bottom level, but still the major gap is in the top level. As the Venkat said, this top business people, the top enterprise architects, actually there that still that collaboration, that kind of discussions, or as the earlier points like the PNL and this architecture kind of things, those gaps still there. But in the bottom level, I think this Agile could fill the gap. Like earlier, the thing was like we had serious gap between the business team, developer team, and even with the QA team. So that, and I think with the Agile, actually we could solve some. At least to some extent, we could solve that problem because we have a strong the prerequisite is the team should have the right combination. Like the team should have a right product owner and the developer and the tester, and of course there should be an architect. So since they are collaboratively and actively they are discussing on the business aspects and and the business team is actually engaging with the technical architects and these team developers. So actually, in a way, actually they are actually filling that gap. So, but still that problem there is there in the top level. So I think the top level issue, because even unfortunately that is the serious problem, because the top level still that gap is there. Finally, that will kill the whole program. So that's it. That is still a gap. So I think there we have some other kind of or agile or some other things should be there to fill that gap.
We'll have to wait and watch that space.
Venkat, you had some questions?
Yes. So, yeah, whether you are talking about the business capabilities and the technical capabilities. No? The same problem we are also faced last week. So, so we have got some requirement, and we have just developed the product. And when we are trying to use the product, now we are thinking that whether it is the right product to use it to reach the customer, or just a best product. Like
just one small thing. Money has been paid, it has been developed, it's been delivered. Now we are thinking.
Now we are thinking just a cloud IVR can be used for reaching the customer instead of the mobile application, because that is the as far as the customer point of view, they are the SIM farmers, they are more comfortable with the telephone instead of the mobile app, when the usability or their comfortability will be higher. So how we can avoid this kind of gap between though we have capabilities, it doesn't mean that we have to develop everything.
Absolutely.
That we need to. So it is because of there is a gap between the business what we are trying to do and the technical team who is sitting some other room. They just get the input and develop the product. So how we can suggest, or have we faced the same kind of problem?
It's kind of interesting, Venkat. And it's not that they are very big. It's just it's a 30-man company. It's not like it's huge enterprise. So
typically everybody could sit in one room, one big room. Everybody can sit actually. It's not like people are geographically dispersed in this communication issue. But yet, you see, here I don't think it is a communication issue, or it's actually a communication issue, because and I will go back, the most secret teaching is imparted in silence. You see, I know I may sound philosophical, but the point is, communication, you may be talking a lot but necessarily not communicating. And as Venkat mentioned, should you develop just because you can? And who in the room can ask that question?
Knowing that backstory a little, right? Probably if I kind of recall one of the first discussions Venkat had with me, right? One of the business stakeholders or somebody said, we need a bazaar application. And then it was off to the courses. Right, so it was like the business, without thinking too much, they kind of suggest a technical solution, and the technical team kind of says, "Oh, technically, I can do it. I'll get that done." I think so. Maybe I think Venkat, you can expand. I think that thing about capability, understanding that, right? I think that's exactly maybe that you could expand on for him to.
Because if we had a way to map out capabilities in that agri industry, and then we say these are the 5 capabilities in which we are playing, in which mobile app or whatever we want to do is going to address a capability, and this is how, and then you have this conversation of who is the consumer of this capability and what do that consumers want, would have left to a different level of exploration. Someone in that group would have had to stand up and make that statement, even at the risk of being outright laughed at which many people have done to me. So that is one. The other point also is uh, sometimes there is a rush. There's a rush to do things.
Rush to do things. Yeah.
There has to be a sane voice that says, hold on, do we really need to rush? Are we 100% sure that we're getting this thing done by such and such date? You're telling me that you're going to have 1,000 customers. Or are you going to have 10 customers per month for the first 6 months? Then we can wait. That conversation, because I remember one of the things that we did, we were trying to do this reduction of the solution cycle time. And we were struggling to find out, okay, I did the solution cycle time, and then it went to delivery. And because of resource constraints and so many other factors, delivery got delayed by 6 months from its original plan. So not only did our effort to reduce the solution cycle time go unnoticed, but we still landed up being branded as guys who are perennially late, because we are part of the same team at that level, right? So then there was this gentleman who gave a creative idea, said that, okay, your go-to market is, if you do the solutioning instead of 12 weeks, you did it in 6 weeks. You are creating a potential opportunity for a 6 weeks earlier go-to market. And now I calculate in the first 1.5 months, you are supposed to get, let's say, X number of customers or X numbers revenue. You're actually saying that you are giving the organization an opportunity to make 1.5 months of revenue extra. That's your credit. Claim it. You see? And that's why if you have that P&L sense, you're able to spin it in a manner that the other person understands. So because communication is always not what you say, it's what the other person makes out of what you say.
So I think it's from what I hear, Venkat, I think it's basically something like they said banking bazaar, then we went off, tried to find a vendor, shortlist them, should I develop? That is where we started. That was the first point of discussion. Should I develop it or should I get a vendor to do it, right?
Correct.
But from Venkat's thing, what I'm kind of getting is what we should have kind of said is, what is that you want? The capability. The farmer needs to know what is available.
Exactly.
The farmer needs to get it. Can the farmer use, so if he needs to get the information, what is the easiest way to get it? This has got nothing to do with technology. Assume that you are doing a business manually, right? What will you define that as? I think that's the first step.
Correct.
If we had got that, then it becomes easier to say, okay, first the customer needs to know, farmer needs to know what products are there. Then we will think about buying, negotiating, placing order and all. If he's not, if there's nobody asking what products are there, why? What is the use of cataloging, inventory and sales? Nobody's going to do that.
I think one thing I understand that startups tend to do some of these things the way which Venkat just told. So it's not it's not that they don't want to find that information. It's that the tendency is, let us try it. Just because we have the capability, so it's like throwing things against the wall and say, let it stick. If it's something will stick.
One small tweak to that, Deepak. Startups which are starved of cash, not which are funded and who burn money in the parking lot, like Uber or Ola. They'll take 1 million and burn everything in the parking lot every day.
No, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter whether you have the money or not. The tendency is to try.
Tendency is to try it out.
Tendency is to try. So if you had the money, you will do a bigger bet. If you don't have the money, you will do the smaller bet. You still do it.
That's true.
So I think I understand why they did it. Means the wisdom is obviously in failure. So so if we learn from it and say, okay, how can we not do it or do it better next time? But I think
it's just nice that Venkat is able to share that with us. And willing to learn from that. I don't think there's anybody in the software industry who has not made the mistake.
Absolutely.
Or who is not making the mistake, or who will not make the mistake in the future also. I'm sure all of us will do the same thing in a different context at some other point in time.
Correct.
Forget about small companies. Big companies do it all the time. So right, so there are so many
that's
products
called R&D.
which yeah.
Are you talking
They
about
can always write it off.
the
Microsoft
Windows?
bought Nokia, and so
Yeah, I was
shut it
about
down,
to say
right?
Windows
So-
Phone and Nokia. I was just
Yeah,
about
so,
to tell that.
so it's not like that the big companies don't make mistakes. So I think if they learn and get on, and obviously this is not the last mistake you are or anybody else is going to make. So
All right.
Thanks for
Okay.
joining, Venkat. Hope to see
My
you in the
pleasure.
future.